Customer segmentation is a very powerful tool, and when used thoughtfully, it allows you to truly understand who your customers are and how to cater to them in the most effective way possible. In today's video, we'll be discussing all of the ins and outs of the segment builder itself, including better understanding the logic behind each of its unique conditions, and we'll get to build out some really interesting and impactful customer segments together. When it comes to creating segments, it's good to know that there's multiple ways of approaching how to create a segment. For example, you might identify an insight within a report that we have, and then use that insight as the baseline for creating a segment from there. Or maybe you already have an idea of what type of segment you want to create, and you'll create it, and then you can run it into the reports afterwards. Or maybe it's the case that you don't want to do any type of analysis and you just want to create your segment for audience purposes only. In that case, you would just create your segment as so, and once it's ready to go, you would go over to create audience and then you would push it over to your connected platform over here. Once you're ready to create your segment, you'll go over to new segment over here. And you'll be able to choose between dynamic or static. Dynamic and static are two different types of segments, where dynamic is focusing on a customer group that will continuously change and update depending on if that customer meets the criteria at hand. A static segment is a fixed list of customers where they will meet the criteria initially, but there will not be any type of updating afterwards, as it's not going to change after it's been originally created. When you're ready to create your segment, you'll choose which one you'd like. In this case, we're going to start off with dynamic segments. And here is we can take a look at different types of conditions, pathways, layers, filters, and so on. So let's start from the top. We can take a look over here under definition, and we can see that there's multiple different types of pathways. We have customers who did, which focuses on different actions that a customer is taking. Or maybe it's the case that you want to identify specific types of attributes that a customer possesses. That's where we would do customers who have. And then we can go to our property dropdown and we can select which one we'd like to filter by. Lastly, we also have our customers who are in. And this specific type of criteria is focusing on customers who belong to a certain type of static segment. For example, maybe it's identifying someone who belonged to a direct mailer list, and we want to see if they performed a certain action after initially receiving the direct mailer itself. This could be a way that we could utilize this type of pathway within our static segment inside of a dynamic segment. In addition to these pathways, we also have filters and layers. That would look like customers who did place an order, being their first order overall time. And I'll see this little option here, which is my filter. And then I can click into my drop downs to get more specific with my criteria point. For example, I want to type in SKU to identify the SKU that they're purchasing in that first order. But let's say I want to add more lines of criteria on top of this, and this is not the only thing I want to identify. That's when I would go over to my layers, and that's when we have two different options. We can choose between and, or we can choose or. And means that the customer must meet both of the criteria lines that you're creating. But if you choose or, that means that they can either match one or the other. So depending on the type of segment that you're creating and its conditions and the details really will depend on if you want to choose and or if you want to choose or. In this case, we're going to stick with and because we want them to meet both lines of criteria. So we'll do customers who did place an order, second order overall time, and then I would identify my additional lines of criteria as so. You can build as many of these criteria lines as you want to, and you can add as many filters or layers as you'd like. So really the options are endless when it comes to building out your segments. When you're done creating your segment, you'll go down to the bottom and you'll see an option called Analytics. And this specific option is identifying if you have the intention of running that segment within our reports to do a further analysis. If you want to further analyze the segment, you'll click this little box right here. If you don't want to analyze the segment and you're ready to leave it as it is or push it over as an audience, you can just leave this option blank. Now let's create some really interesting and impactful segments together that are proven tactics that work across a multitude of industries. For starters, let's take a look at lookalike audiences. The lookalike audience is great for growing more of your high quality customers. And we can identify a high quality customer by focusing on RFM status specifically. And RFM status is identifying customers who have certain types of attributes when it comes to recency, frequency, and monetary value. So identifying customers who are a top customer, a high potential, and a loyal customer are a great foundation for a lookalike audience. How we would build that segment out is we would go over here and do customers who have. We would then type in RFM status, one of, and then we can simply select all of the ones that we want to group together. Another really interesting use case for a segment is focusing on upselling your champion products or a hidden gem. To get more insights on a hidden gem, you can go over to the product overview report and take a look at the video there. With this segment, we would be focusing on customers who are purchasing the complementary product to the champion product, but has not yet purchased said champion product. So how that segment would look is as so. We would do customers who did, place an order at least one time over all time. We would add our filter to specify the SKU that's being purchased, and we would then type in the SKU of the complementary product. The next thing I'll need to do is add a layer to this segment. So I'll click on and we'll do customers who did, place an order exactly 0 times over all time. I'll add my layer, I'll type in SKU, and then I would put in the SKU for the champion product itself. This type of segment here and this type of condition ensures that that customer has never purchased this product before, ensuring that when you reach out to them with that champion product, it's a really great and really strong upsell opportunity. Another really fascinating segment to build is focusing on marketing and which types of sources and campaigns your customers are coming from within their first order. This is a really great way to start the process of the analysis of maybe customers who are coming from Google versus those that are coming from Meta. And then you can do the compare with feature to see which source is producing a really high LTV customer over time by taking a look at them side by side. Or maybe it's to understand the types of products that those customers are gravitating towards from Google versus Meta. How we would build this out is we would go over here and we would do customers who did, place an order, being their first order over all time. We would add our filter here and we would type in marketing. We have the option of choosing first, any, or last click. In this case, I want to understand last click, so I'll choose that one. We can choose source, campaign, or whatever that makes sense. I'm going to do source, and then I would type in my specific source, which in this case is Meta. And that's how I would create my segment. Lastly, some of our integrations actually unlock additional segment opportunities, such as Gorgeous, Google Analytics, and Recharge, for example. I highly encourage you to look at those if you can, to connect to them so you can build even more interesting segments around those specific types of properties. Customer segmentation is more than just about creating lists. It's about creating data insights, opportunities, and ways to really better the customer experience as a whole. By taking a look at your data and understanding now that there's multiple ways of creating a customer segment, we can now look at your customer data and know how to turn them into the most powerful and effective customer segments possible.